Do you love quilting, but you want a faster, scrappier way to make quilt blocks? Let's make not one, but 5 of my favorite Scrappy Quilt-As-You-Go quilt blocks together. Hi friends, I am so excited to share this video because recently a viewer asked if I had a tutorial showing how I made my blocks in my last video, and I'll link it up above me. So today we're diving into 5 of my favorite Quilt-As-You-Go blocks. These blocks are perfect for using up your scraps, which you know I love. Plus they add that cozy handmade feel to your projects. Grab your fabric scraps and let's start stitching. I will be using some drawings that I made for myself, and I would be more than happy to share these with you. If there's enough interest in the comments, I will add them to my Gumroad shop if you're interested. But it kind of reminds me of how to lay them out. These are 9-inch blocks, and it will be for each one of the blocks that we'll be making today. So just let me know if you would like to have these. They are not to scale, except the blocks are 9-inch, but it can guide you through and help you practice making these Quilt-As-You-Go blocks. And before you know it, you will be coming up with your own Quilt-As-You-Go blocks. These are just 5 of my favorite that go pretty fast, and I just wanted to give you that option. Again, if there's interest, I will put them in my Gumroad shop. All right, now let's get to stitching. And before we get started, I have pre-cut 5 pieces of batting. These are 8.5 inches and some backing, and this is just plain muslin, and these are 9 inches. I make my batting a 1/2 inch smaller than my backing. The blocks that I'm making today, I'm going to be adding those to the quilt I made in my last video because I need to finish this up. I have made myself a bunch of these, I think you call them design blocks, and they're really easy to make. This is just poster board and then some batting, and then I just hot glued some fabric around the edge, but it really helps me to lay out my blocks. It's just a suggestion, but you can have several of these on hand, and it really comes in handy. The first block I'm going to show you is called Quilt-As-You-Go Double the Strips. It's a 9-inch block, and basically you're taking 2-inch strips and you're lying them this way, and then we'll put a 1-inch strip on top and then start adding 2-inch strips that way. So let's get started with that one. I laid this out already, so I'm just going to take and move these on my table kind of like how I wanted them, and you don't even have to pick them. That's what's nice. You could just pull out of your pile and go for it. You can also use strips that have already been put together. These are 2-inch, so we're going to throw that in the mix just so we can use up that pile. And now I can put this away so that I can set up for my next block. The first thing I'm going to do is just take my piece of batting and a backing and make sure it's evenly spaced on the outside, just like that. And if you want, you could take a glue stick and just secure that. I just have this Elmer's washable glue. Secure that in the center, just a little dab, just like that. The next thing I want to do is just take and mark the center, a diagonal line with a marking pen from corner to corner. Then I'll take my first piece, whatever my longest is, and I'm going to place the edge on this diagonal. I'll take another piece, place it on top, right sides together, and then you can choose, but then I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance to the edge. Bring it back, flip it over, and you don't even have to press yet if you don't want to. Just like that. I'm going to grab another piece and same thing, 1/4 inch seam allowance, back. Look at how fast it goes. And you may not even need all your pieces. And again, these are 2-inch strips. If I sew this here, I just want to make sure if I flip that up that I have enough to cover that edge. Not quite. I could even do this, and that should cover that edge. Yes, I think that will work. So I'll just go ahead and sew just like that, because we're going to trim up the block. And we'll just flip that up, and that will go to the edge. I'm just going to take my glue stick and put a little bit right there so that that stays there till I can get it trimmed. Ready to do the other side. Same thing, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we'll flip it, do a little finger press, pick another block. See how fast it goes? Flip. And I could just take this one and place it right sides together here. There we go. And that should be enough to cover that. There's that one. Dab of glue to hold that down, or you could pin it as well. Next, we're going to take our 1-inch strip. We're going to lay it right down the center. Quarter-inch seam allowance. Flip that up. And we're ready to go down the other side. I think I may give that one a press. Now we're ready to go the other way. So we're just going to take this one, because it's the longest I have, lay that on there, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip, and now we're ready to trim. And it went together so fast. But first, I think I will press everything from the center out. There we go. Now we're ready to trim. And we're just going along the edge of the muslin. We'll just turn everything here. And just like that, we have a quilt block. And you could make a whole quilt just from this pattern alone and alternate the patterns. Yes, look at that. And it's so pretty. That is block number 1. And in the next segment, we'll do block number 2. Our next block, block number 2, I'm calling simply strips, and it's just that. We're just going to go from the center diagonally and do 2-inch strips, but of course you could make them any size you wanted. This is a simple classic Quilt-As-You-Go block that comes together beautifully. And you're just going to grab your strips, whatever you want to use. I'll start with this one, lay it in the center across, and then we need to have one that goes on top. Let's see if this one will fit. Nope, but we'll keep that one. I think I found one that will work, and we will trim that. We'll save this one in case we need it. Right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. We've stitched it and we're going to flip it. Just give it a quick press. Another variation of this is you could do 2-inch strips and then 1.5 inch strips. Right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip, and we just need one little piece for in the corner. 1/4 inch seam allowance. This one did not go all the way to the corner, but I'm not worried about it because this little piece will be in the seam allowance when I join my blocks. I am going to put just a dab of glue up here to hold that in place, just like that, and I'm ready to work on the other side. So I'll just flip this over, and I think this one fits just right. 1/4 inch seam allowance, flip up. I think I'll do 2 little pieces at the end. Right sides together and stitch. And I just need one little piece for back there. Let's see if this one will work. I think it will. Flip that up and we're ready for one quick press before we trim. We're ready to trim this one, and we're trimming to the size of the backing. And quilt block number 2 is ready. Just that fast. There you have it. It's quilted on the back, ready to be used in your next project. Our next block is Quilt-As-You-Go number 3, Simply Crazy. And it's named that because I use the Simply Crazy template. Made by Rachel Shelburne. This is my favorite quilting template because you just start with one piece of fabric in the center, and it's perfect for using up small fabric pieces in a playful way. And in my template, I kind of show you, here's my fabric. So we're going to add on to 1, then we'll add on to 2, then we'll add on to 3, 4, and 5. And sometimes what I do is I lay this on here, and you can kind of see where the lines go that you have to match up. And I'll show you that. But right now we're just going to be adding fabric pieces along this line. So grab your scraps, and we know if we flip it, we want it to at least extend to this and this. Let me sew that and I'll show you. Now if I flip this up, my next line, maybe it's easier to show you with a ruler. My next target line is this. So if you wanted, when you're just getting started, I pretty much eyeball it now. Let me find my marking pen. You can mark this, and you could trim that. Just like that. Then you know that your next piece, according to the diagram, goes 3 this way. So our third piece will go here so that it can flip up here. And I'm just going to make a mark because I don't want to sew past here. I'm going to flip this up just like that. If I want, I could take this is our fourth, this is our third, yeah, sorry about that. 1, 2, 3. So our third line, I'll make a mark right here so that I know where to cut that one. And you're just working, I work counterclockwise, but you could work clockwise as well. Now we're ready for this side. So we'll find a piece for that. This one will work. We're going to go from here to here. Flip it up, just like that. Our next line that is empty is right here. So all I'm going to do is make a mark. Trim that. Then we know we're ready to sew a little piece here. Right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. We'll flip it up. Now we know that our next line includes 2 pieces of fabric. Just like that. So I can trim this just to reduce bulk. Some people do not trim it. It's whatever you would like to do. So now we need another piece. And you could make it fun by using some pieces that you've already put together. So we'll go right sides together. You can see how this is a great scrap buster. All right, I'm laying it on that line. 1/4 inch seam allowance. We'll flip that up. And I wanted to show you, there's a trick. Let me find, let's say you sewed too much. So you could just take your seam ripper in there very gently. And then you could easily cut that piece off. I'm going to come in here and mark this. All right, that easy. Now we're ready for a piece to come up here. All right sides together. And you know, actually that might be cutting it close, but I do reach the batting, so that should be okay. Let's go ahead and sew that. flip it up. And I do see that I do have something there that matches, but that is perfectly fine. We're ready. I think we want to add something across here. So let's find something for that. Not sure if that would be tall enough. Of course, I could use it and then just add another piece up there. I think I will use this one. Yep, we're going to do that. And if you like these little pieces here that are showing, if you want to trim those, you can. I will definitely trim this. All right, we're ready to flip this one. And while I'm up here, I see I need one more piece for up here in the corner. So if I did that, that would cover that corner. So we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll flip that up. We're ready to come over here. And what we're looking for is a strip to cover these two fabrics. We have this one that would fit perfectly. So, right sides together. And again, we have one underneath sticking up, so you could just trim that. Flip that up. And while we're up here, we'll go ahead and take care of this up here. And because it's on the end, I think I will put a little glue up there. This one is on the end too. Okay. Just press that down real quick. There. All right, we're rotating again because we're working back with this one. And we have a little spot right here, but you notice how it's going to be kind of hard to get something to stitch and flip there. So we will cut this and this. Okay. So what we want to do to make this happen is we're going to grab our ruler and make a line right across at the top here. Then we can bring it here and flip it up. And I think this is the perfect fit. Then it'll come up and hide all those raw edges. And that'll happen sometimes where you just have a tiny little hole and you can just fill it in the best you can. And if you want, you can cut away this bulk up here. Use your seam ripper if you need to rip anything out. Okay. Now we can flip this up, and that is all covered up there. Now we just need a piece for across here. And at any time you're not sure, just take your open seam, and our open seam is this right here, and just go like this and you'll know where you have to cover. We don't want too much of that. Let's see. Maybe some more polka dots. Or this one. Nope, that will not work. That's why you just gotta try it. Okay, we can go all the way across with this one. Flip it up. Now this one is ready for trimming. So let's move our scraps. And then I have to move all my tools. I don't know if you guys have the same situation. We only have so much room on our tabletop, right? And our ruler. And if you don't have the Simply Crazy, it's perfectly fine. You just need a shape cut out of a template. Just take some cardboard, and as long as it has 5 sides, you've got a template. So no worries there. All right, we're going to give this a quick press from the center out. This one is all trimmed up. And look how pretty. And remember, we did say that there was going to be a short piece up here, and it's perfectly fine because it is within the seam allowance of when I joined the quilt. So there's that one. And you can see you could start with just any 5-sided shape, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And get the same effect, and see how we just use some strips for here where you join them together. So if you've got some short strips, just take them and put them together. That was block 3, the Crazy Quilt block. This is Quilt-As-You-Go block number 4, and I'm calling this the Scrappy Potato Chip. This one's pretty easy. It uses 2.5 by 4.5 fabric pieces. Just like potato chips, this block is addictive to make. You won't stop at one. It's so easy. Again, we're going to take our backing, whatever backing you want, 1/2 inch smaller on the batting. Put that in the center. We are going to take the 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles. We'll sew 1 to 2, then we'll add 3, then we'll add 4. We'll sew 5 and 6 together, 7 and 8 together, and attach those. So first I'm going to do 1 and 2. I'm going to cut some 2.5 by 4.5 inch blocks and I'll be right back. So we need to do 1 and 2 first. 1 and 2. So I thought for the center I would start with these. And then all I'm going to do, if you wanted, you could. I normally don't. If you wanted, you could mark the center of where you're going to start. I don't because I like the scrappy look of having to trim at the end. But you do you. The idea is to get these done quickly, right? So then if I folded this in half this way, I know that that goes there. And if I do this one, just like that, I'm going to lay that right there. And that should be the center. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All right, we are started, and I can see I'm off a little bit, but that's fine. Now we're ready to attach 3 as on our diagram. And after a while, you won't even need the diagram, but I'm just gonna go up here and grab one of these, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. There's that one. And I am going to glue that down. I just don't want it to go anywhere. Then we're ready for this bottom block. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I need to do 5 and 6. So I'm just going to grab these 2 and do a 1/4 inch seam on here. I'm just sewing them together. I don't want the polka dots up there, so I'm going to go like this. And right sides together. I'll just open that seam. Quarter inch seam allowance. Press it open. And I am a little off. So we're just going to stretch that over there, but I'm still within my seam allowance. And if you're off a little, it is okay. We're going to do the same thing again. Right sides together and sew those together. We don't want the polka dot there, so we'll go this way. Right sides together. I'll try to line it up a little better this time. I'm going to press those seams open. Okay. This one looks like it's way off, which is fine because we can trim this to use in a different block, or we could add this onto the side to make it work. But I wanted to show you it doesn't always work out. So I left it in there. But you can see where my batting is on the side. So I could certainly use this for another project where I could trim it down to this particular size. And I think I will go ahead and trim that. Our scrappy potato chip is all trimmed up, and there's the back quilted. And I did have to trim this too. It is 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. So if you use my template to use 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangles, you'll want to remember you will end up trimming it up to 8 1/4 by 8 1/4, which is fine, right? You can use it in other projects. And what you could do is adjust your blocks. I'm not really good with math, but if you adjusted your blocks to say 2 3/4 by 4 3/4 to fit a 9-inch backing, I think that would be better. Block number 5 is the Scrappy log cabin. And this is really, really easy. You start with a 2.5 inch square in the center, and all we're going to do is follow around and add 1.5 strips all around except for the last one, and it'll be whatever size you need to fill that side. This is a timeless classic with a Quilt-As-You-Go twist. I went ahead and did an X in the center because I need the center of this. And I have my 2.5 inch block, just like that. So I said I am going to sew it'll be 2.5 by 1.5 on the bottom. We're only working with strips that are 1.5 inch wide. So I'll go ahead and cut this one 1.5. And so the first one will be 1.5 by 2.5. And then it's supposed to go here because this is number 2. So I'm just going to sew that a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Number 3 is going to be that one will be 3.5 by 1.5. And we'll just trim this to fit there on this side, and then trim on this side. And you're just going to go in a circle. How fun is that? Flip it up. And you'll see we're going to go to number 4. And 4 is, it's also 3.5 by 1.5. And we're getting low on our strips, which we want, right? Flip it up, simply stitch and flip. Then on this one, we'll take our handy dandy ruler. We're going to need 4.5 by 1.5. Then we know we had to add to this side. That one is about, there's 4, 4.5, and 4 3/4. So this side will be 4 3/4. And you can see that it comes together really fast. That one's a little short. We'll flip that up. All right, and if we come over to this side, it's now up to about 5.5. All right, and we're just going to trim right here. And we'll just keep turning and adding 1.5-inch strips until we're done. And with Quilt-As-You-Go, they don't always come out just like you want them to, but that's okay. And I think that's the charm of it, of the Quilt-As-You-Go. We'll flip this up. We need a 1.5 for the top here. That will be 6 3/4. Is this 1.5? It is. Then we need 6 3/4 for up here. So we've reached the end up there. Let's find a strip long enough to cover up this side. I think this one will do it. And always remember, right sides together. Otherwise, we'll be using the seam ripper. We'll flip that up. Now we're ready for this side. This one is about, actually it should come all the way across, but this was a shorter piece, I think, which is fine because it's in the seam allowance. So, but it should be 8 inches. And if you have to, you can sew pieces together to get what you need. That would give it a more scrappy look as well. Right sides together, 1/4-inch seam allowance. And this is pretty close to my seam allowance, so I'm good with that. We'll trim. Then our last side is going to be, it should be 9 inches. And that will be our last piece. Take it all the way across. We'll have to trim this one. And are you ready for the last flip? There we go. We'll flip this over and see if we do need to do any trimming. There's just a little bit to do. And we'll turn this around. And again, you see here where I have the muslin and a little bit of the batting, it's fine because that would all be in the seam allowance when I join the quilt blocks. So there is the Scrappy Log Cabin, and that was number 5. Those are my most favorite Quilt-As-You-Go Scrappy quilt blocks. They're so easy, so much fun. I have a quick Bible verse for you today and a devotional thought. The work of righteousness shall be peace, and the effect of righteousness, quietness, and assurance forever. Isaiah 32:17. Quilting, much like life, is a process of stitching together the pieces we have, trusting that each scrap, no matter how small, has a purpose. Sometimes life feels a bit scrappy too, full of unexpected seams and uneven edges. Yes. But just like in quilting, when we surrender our moments to God, He weaves them into something beautiful. Isn't that right? His peace is the thread that holds us together, giving us quiet assurance that every piece of our story is in His hands. I hope that you make lots of these Quilt-As-You-Go blocks, and let's talk about the easiest way to join them together. Be sure to watch the easiest way to join Quilt-As-You-Go blocks, my favorite method, in this video, and see how to bring your blocks into a finished quilt. Thank you so much for watching, sharing, and commenting. It truly means the world to me. I love this little scrap fabric quilting community we're building, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Until the next video, God bless you.